If you have a Bible, go ahead and turn to Genesis chapter 2. Genesis chapter 2 is where we're going to be hanging out today a little bit. I'm going to show you a verse in a moment. But today we are continuing our collection of talks entitled Restless, Finding Rest in the Stress of Life. And I don't know about you, but I think this is a collection not just for VOO Church, but really for the culture that we live in a stressed out, anxious, depressed, heavily medicated world right now. But I believe that God has principles. I believe that Jesus has a pattern that we can learn from, not just psychologically, but truly for our soul to be refreshed. And I want to welcome all of our VOO friends and family that are watching by way of YouTube or joining us on the podcast. We're so grateful for you. Come on, VOO Church, can we make some noise for all of our VOO friends and family? Today is part 2 of our collection, and I want to preach to you today from the subject, Closed on Sunday. Closed on Sunday. If you haven't heard, it's been quite a wild week. If you haven't heard, my wife gave birth this past Thursday to our second-born son. We named him Wild Wesley Wilkerson. His brother's name is Wyatt Wesley Wilkerson. I just felt like, man, if your brother's triple dub, you're going to be triple dub as well. And man, we're so thankful for this community that we're part of called VOO. You guys have prayed for us. You guys have encouraged us. Many of you know our story. Some of you, maybe you're guests today, but for 8 years, my wife and I went on a journey of infertility. We couldn't have kids. And the fact that 2 years ago, God gave us a son named Wyatt was more than enough. But how many of you know that you serve the God of more than enough? And he gave us double for our trouble. Can we thank God today that he's still working miracles, that he's still doing the impossible? And I think it's pretty incredible. And I wanted you guys, I can't wait for him to meet you. He's got so many uncles, aunts, tias, and tios, and all of you are part of his family. He's gonna love you. But you couldn't all come to the hospital. I wish you could have. I tried to make it happen, but security's like, no, they can't all come. I was like, whatever, it's my family. But they're like, no, it's too big of a family. I'm like, you don't know my family. So anyways, I thought I'd bring the hospital to you. I want you guys to celebrate with us. Check out this. This is a little story of our weekend. Check it out.
Te amo, Dada. Hey, wait, give me a kiss. All right. But guess what? You're gonna meet your new little brother, Wild. Say, okay, Dada. Okay. All right, sounds good. Te amo. Amo. Good boy. I love you. Oh my gosh.
This is the best thing. I love it so much.
Wild.
Oh, this is precious. This is our newborn.
Yeah. Lord, I thank you for little Wild. I thank you that, Lord, he is on his way. Let every moment of this day be exactly what you've ordered it to be. In Jesus' name, amen.
Let's have a baby.
Yeah. Oh, I love you. My legs are all going out, man. So in a moment, your little brother is coming up. Yes, it's your little brother. He looks like you. He's pretty handsome. So now it's going to be Wyatt and Wild. This is your little brother. Hey. Wild.
It's gonna be your best friend for life.
Can you say hi? Can you say hi? Let me just check her.
He would see you.
Okay.
What?
So
You're beautiful.
call me if you need help getting him on the breast, okay?
Oh, Wild. Wild, can you say I love you, Wyatt?
Give him a good kiss on his toes.
Oh, you're good, big
that
brother.
was the best.
Hey, come on, church. We serve a miracle-working God. Amen, 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 amen. Let it be a testimony for you today. If you're struggling out there, if God did it for us, how many know he can do it for you? Do you believe it today? We are so thankful for this little boy. In fact, today after this service, I'm driving to the hospital. I'm bringing my wife and my son home, and I'm looking forward to it. We had a beautiful delivery. Wild is safe and healthy. His mother is safe and healthy. But we did have something take place right after delivery where Dawntree was in the post-recovery. And Dawntree had a C-section. I don't know if you've ever had one of those moments where everything's going really, really good, and then something quickly changes where it kind of gets dramatic. We had a minor emergency take place, which is I went to go see Wild in the nursery, and then I came back. And when I came back, Dawntree began to bleed, and they couldn't stop the bleeding. In fact, if you can believe it, they had to call her doctor back to the hospital. And it went from this moment of celebration to quickly this moment of real drama, real urgency. There was 4 nurses around. The doctor was there trying to do everything she possibly could to stop this bleeding. Thank God that he uses nurses and doctors. They were able to control the bleeding. They were able to stop the bleeding. Come on, can we thank God that I believe he kept her safe. And what's incredible to me as I was thinking about it is that it got like, I don't know, it was a scary moment. They were talking about a blood transfusion. Like, I didn't know what was happening. Yet as I reflected on the moment, one of the things that I remember very, very vividly was that there's 5 different people around Dawntree. And how many of you know that all 5 of those people were completely focused? They were completely engaged. They were giving everything that they had to the moment. Why? Because it was urgent. Like, all of us would agree that it would be pretty disrespectful or inappropriate that in this urgent moment for the doctor to pull out her cell phone and start calling her friends saying, what are we doing for Saturday brunch? Like, that wouldn't be appropriate because it was a moment of urgency. I think one of the challenges that I notice about the world that we're living in right now is oftentimes the only moments you actually get people's full attention is when it's urgent. The only moments that we're actually engaged is in moments of urgency. In fact, this is sort of the premise that I'm working with today, and that simply is that we forsake the important for the urgent. There's so many things in life that we are missing out on at times because we're going from one urgent moment to the next urgent moment. We're missing out on the important things that God's placed in our life, but our life is full of drama because the only time that we engage, the only time that we have attention is when there's an emergency and when something is urgent. Friend, this is not how God intended us to live. We shouldn't move from urgent thing to urgent thing. We've got to learn how to create boundaries. We've got to learn how to create a pace. We've got to learn how to create a rhythm. We've got to learn how to follow the pattern of God and find ourselves stewarding all of the important things that he's placed around us. Yet what's interesting is if I took a microphone around this room today, nobody in here wants to do this. Nobody's like, yeah, I want to keep letting go of important things just to deal with urgent things. So the question is, why does this happen in our culture? I think there's lots of reasons. One of the reasons I wrote down this week is we're overworked. It's very, very ironic that this nation was settled by a group of people called Puritans. And Puritans actually had part of their mission as they came to this new world that they wanted to set up a Sabbath society, a society that it was mandated that everybody would take one day of rest. The irony is that's how they started. Now today, America works more hours on average than any other nation in the world. We work 137 more hours on average than Japan, 260 more hours on average than Great Britain, 499 more hours on average than France. There is a workaholism in this nation that oftentimes goes unnoticed and unchecked, not just in the world, but even in the house of God. Many of us, we worship our work at times. How do you know if you worship your work? You know you're worshiping your work when you find all of your identity through your work. It's this overworked nation that creates a restlessness and a nation that only finds engagement when things are urgent. It's not that we're just overworked, it's that we're tired. Somebody said amen. Like we're literally sleepy. Did you know that before Thomas Edison invented the light bulb, that the average amount of sleep that people were getting was 10 hours a night? Some of you are like, wow, sounds like heaven. Before the light bulb, the sun would set, you're like, what do you want to do? Let's go to bed. It kind of puts things into perspective, right? I used to grow up hearing stories of great men of God like John Wesley. John Wesley would rise at 4 a.m. and seek God. True, but he went to bed at 5 p.m. Not as powerful when you realize you got 10 hours of sleep, bro. You're good. The national average now today in America is 6.7 hours a night. Some of you are like, that's a lot. I don't get that. I'm not suggesting that we can recapture 10 hours a night. What I am saying is that there's probably a good opportunity for all of us to evaluate our schedule and to see where our hours are going at night. I got a feeling that a lot of us are wasting time late in the night. Look at your neighbor and say, go to bed. Actually, don't say it, but just think it to yourself. Go to bed. You're tired, you're sleepy. You're not just overworked, tired, you are distracted. I am distracted. I'm preaching with you today. I'm distracted 1,617 times. That's how many times every day we touch the screen of our phone. There's only 1,440 minutes in a day. It means that we're touching our phone more than there are minutes in the day. 4 hours is the national average that people consume their phone, but it's not just phone consumption, it's another 4 hours that we give to TV consumption. Friends, just between the phone and the TV, people are working a full-time job. And we're escaping into these other places and we think it's feeding our soul, but it's leaving us depleted. It's leaving us moving from urgent thing to urgent thing, and we're not finding rest. The result of being overworked, tired, and distracted is that we are now anxious. 39% of Americans say they're more anxious this year than they were last year. 75% of Americans say that they go to bed every night with their cell phone next to their bed. My precious. And out of those 75%, 90% wake up in the morning. The first thing that they do is reach for their phone. I'm telling you, it's creating a culture that we're forsaking the important and we're only tending to the urgent. The only time we engage is when there's an emergency. The only time that we apply ourselves is when somebody is bleeding. Something's got to change. Something's got to give. And maybe you're sitting here right now and you're going, I know what needs to change. I need more time. You ever, I say this sometimes, like, God, really I need 25 hours, man, you know? But how many of you know that you don't need more time? You need to learn how to steward your time. See, none of this is what God intended for humanity. None of this is what God planned for your soul. God has a cadence to creation, and you and I, we would find ourselves being refreshed and at peace and anxiety depleting if we could learn the cadence of creation. See, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And remember, God says, let there be light. And then God goes on a creating spree. And for 6 days, he creates. But he finally gets to the seventh day. Genesis chapter 2, verse 2. Here it is. But the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day, he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy. Someone say holy. Because on it, he rested from all the work of creating that he had done. God works for 6 days, and then on the seventh day, he rests, he stops, he pauses. Now, it's very important, theologically speaking, that you understand God did not rest because he was tired. See, many of us in this room, the only time we rest is when we feel tired. But just so you understand, God has never been tired. God's not like in heaven exhausted, like, oh my God. These people are stressing me out. I got emails on top of emails, these prayer requests. Who could ever get to all these prayer requests? He's not like a stressed out Santa, okay? He's God. God rested because he was finished. Very, very important. It's a really fun case study. You can go back this week, Genesis chapter 1. I would challenge you just to read it this week and watch the creation pattern. Watch the cadence. God was creating things, and every time he created something, he would stop and say, "It is good." Which, how dope is that, man? God's like, "See that? That's good." I like that. But I actually think there's something to it. That God would say, "It's good," meaning I'm finished. I'm done with that project. You and I, we have a problem because we go to work every day or we apply ourselves in the week, and what happens? We get done and we have this perfectionism society that leaves us more anxious and more depleted because every time we look at our work, we can't just leave it. We always go, "It should have been better. It could have been better. It's not good. It's bad. I'm bad. Oh my goodness." But God, think about God. I'm not for 1 second suggesting that God's creation is not good. Okay, I'm not suggesting that. What I am implying today is that God could have done more. Like, you understand this, right? Like, I'm not saying the creation is not good. I'm just saying God could have continued to create. Like, if he wanted to, he could have made real unicorns. Could have done it, you know? He could have made a butterfly that could talk and could wake up in the morning going, "Good morning, Rich. It's the Lord's day." He could have done that. But he didn't. He stopped and said, "It is good." What if he was trying to create a pattern for you that you would learn to say, "All right, I've applied myself today. I've given it my best. I'm gonna go home and go to sleep because guess what? That thing's gonna be waiting for me tomorrow. It's good. I'm finished." What's so amazing is that when God got to the sixth day, he made you and me. And the Bible says that you and I were made in his image. And here's what's really interesting is that when he got done creating man and woman, he didn't say it is good. He said it's very good. God thinks that you are very good. And if you're very good, maybe you should quit criticizing his work. Some of us in this room, we are so hard on ourselves. We are so judgmental towards ourselves. It's amazing how you can be a Pharisee to yourself. You can be religious to yourself. You beat yourself up. You criticize yourself, and you're not getting any better. Give yourself a break. God says your default is very good. Not your status, not your job, not your education, not the money in your bank account, not what society says about you. God says you're very good because you were created in my image, meaning it's not your accomplishment that declares it, it's his announcement over your life. Come on, somebody, give God praise. He says you're very good. You're very good. And so God works for 6 days. It's good, it's good, it's good. It's very good. Seventh day, he rests. He Sabbaths. The word Sabbath actually comes from the Hebrew word Shabbat, and we learned this last week. It means to stop. It's a verb, Sabbath. What did you do for Sabbath? Are you going to Sabbath? Are you going to rest? Listen to me. God rested. If God thought it was important to rest, maybe we should think it's important to rest. God works for 6 days, and on the seventh day, he Shabbats. He stops and he rests. Ladies and gentlemen, you serve the God who created the weekend. Oh, somebody better give him praise today. Now, I don't know if you noticed this, but this is really cool. Notice in Genesis 2, he made the day holy. This is the first time in the scriptures that we see the word holy show up. First time in all the Bible is about the Sabbath, that the Sabbath is holy. Holy means to be set apart, meaning God was saying there's something about this day. This day is set apart, that if you'll honor this day, the other 6 days will start to make sense. The other 6 days will have purpose. The other 6 days will fall in line, for this day is set apart. It's like music. Every good music or piece of music you like, it has a rhythm to it. It's not just continuous notes. It's different tones with different breaks and different pauses. As you read the Psalms, you've seen this before. Go home, read the Psalm. You'll see there's these moments on the side of your Bible. It will say Selah. The word Selah means to pause. Because as David was giving songs to God, he would say Selah, which would mean pause for a minute, give God praise, let that thing sink in, and then let's get back to worshiping him for a moment. Listen to me. Work without rest is like music without rhythm. Work without rest is like a psalm that doesn't have a Selah. It's like a song that doesn't have a refrain. They go hand in hand, and the day is holy. It's beautiful because man was created on the sixth day, but on the seventh day was when God created the Sabbath, a day of rest. I love this picture that man's first day on the earth was a day of rest. Rest so you can work. It's a picture of the cross of Jesus Christ. That on the cross, what did Jesus say? It is finished. It is good. I've done the work. You don't love me first, I love you first. You don't work for me and then I grant you rest. I'm giving you rest so you can therefore go and work. I wish I could get a witness today on this Sunday morning. Come on, somebody. I've just been kind of geeking out about the Bible. I don't know if you've ever seen this before, but once again, this is just all in Genesis chapter 1. Genesis 1 verse 5, notice this, watch this. And there was evening and there was morning the first day. You see that? That's crazy. Genesis 1:8, watch this. And there was evening and there was morning the second day. Did you see that? That's crazy. I don't think you're seeing it. Let me go to Genesis 1:13. And there was evening and there was morning the third day. You see that? That's crazy. I don't know if you're seeing it, but there's a pattern that I'm noticing. So many of us in this room, the way that we look at life is we look at life that I wake up in the morning and the day begins and I work really hard so I can come back and go to sleep at night. Then I wake up again and work really hard and I go to sleep at night. But the pattern that God shows us here looks different. In fact, Jews celebrate the lunar calendar. That they actually think that it's when the sun sets, that's when the new 24 hours begins. Meaning, I go into the evening, and then as I rest, I wake up in the morning to go and work. That I start in a place of rest. It's beautiful because the scripture says that darkness covered the earth, meaning God did not create darkness. Darkness is simply the absence of light. That's why God said, let there be light. And when light entered the equation, darkness was put on its heels, and that which was formless became formed, and that which was void became filled, and everything changed about the scenario. But when you take this concept and you apply it to the book of Psalms, when it says weeping endures for the night, but joy comes in the morning light, what it tells me is that if you're in a night right now, you can rest assured day is on the way. God is gonna bring light into your situation. Rest brings strength. Rest brings focus. Rest brings clarity. Rest brings engagement. If you're tired from jumping from one urgent thing to the next urgent thing and you're losing out on that which is important, maybe today you could hear God's word. It's time to get closed on Sunday. Now, a lot of us in this room, I didn't title my sermon today, The Power of Sabbath, because I feel like some people would have just tuned me out right away. Because some of you hear the word Sabbath and your mind quickly goes to the 10 Commandments, because that's where you learn it. But I didn't start the 10 Commandments on purpose because I wanted to show you that this is a principle. This is a principle that predates the Mosaic law. It's like the tithe. The tithe is not just something that shows up in Malachi. The tithe is something that Abraham participated in and Jesus participated in. It's a principle in God's creation, and that's how Sabbath works. It's a cadence, it's a rhythm, it's a pattern. It's like the law of gravity. You can go against it all you want, but it just is. It's real. And therefore, in the 10 Commandments, God's giving his people the best ways to live. And we get to Exodus chapter 20, verse 8. This is the fourth commandment. He says, remember. Everyone say, remember. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, but he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Everyone say holy. It's amazing. I've been in church my whole life, and I have yet to be in church and have someone walk up to me and brag to me about breaking the 10 Commandments. Like no one walks in and is like, yo, bro, murdered a dude last night, give me that. Like we don't do that. We're like, no, police, arrest him quickly. We don't do that. I don't know anybody who's like, oh my goodness, last night we formed a graven image in the house, we bowed down, it was electric. No one does that. We're like, no, that's not how we're intended to live. We don't brag about breaking the commandments, except for one. I can't tell you how many times in this world, but even in church, and we'll talk about it next week, we brag about breaking the Sabbath. Yo, man, I haven't had a day off in months, been working hard though. I don't think that's okay. I don't think that's right. I don't think that's what God has intended for you. How's that working out for you? I know you're strong. I know you're tough. It can last for a little while, but it will catch up with you because it's a principle in the earth. You are a part of the creation story. There's nothing living on the earth that constantly and continually simply produces. No, tides come in, tides go out, sun rise, sun sets, hormonal cycles, stars in the air. We're all a part of this story, seasons and patterns and rhythms, producing and resting, producing and resting. You weren't built to be nonstop. You weren't built to go at the pace that you're going. You've got to pause. And could it be that our culture is so distracted, so anxious, so overworked, so sleepy because we have not come up with a systematical way to pause, stop, and reflect? It's amazing. You read all 10 commandments, you will not see only one starts with that word remember. Like God doesn't say, remember, don't kill people. He doesn't. There's only one. Remember the Sabbath. Could it be that God had an idea that you and I were going to be prone to forget it? Yeah. Could it be that God had the foresight to see our nation, our culture, our world and say, I don't really know if the Sabbath is for me. I think that's for other people. That's an old thing of the past. Really? How's that working out for you? Because listen to me, Sabbath is coming. It's coming for you one way or another. Either you stop or something will make you stop. Sabbath is coming. Look at what Wayne Muller said. He said it this way. Beautiful theologian who wrote a great book on the Sabbath. He says, if we do not allow for a rhythm of rest in our overly busy lives, illness becomes our Sabbath. Our pneumonia, our cancer, our heart attack, our accidents create Sabbath for us. I was on the phone last week with a friend of mine in the break here, and I was preaching the B block last week, and in the break I was talking to a friend of mine who's going through cancer right now. Very successful guy, influential guy, non-stop schedule. I mean, just all over the world, flying. And for the last 3 months, he has been going through chemotherapy in a hospital. And he said, Rich, it's the first time in my life that I've just been stopped in my tracks. And I've been in these moments of solitude and stillness, and I've had to confront who I really am, what I really believe, and who God is. And this is the phrase that he said to me that I think is powerful. He said, yo, busy isn't working. Listen to me. Sabbath is coming. It will either be your delight or your discipline. I don't want to live my whole life forsaking the important for the urgent. I don't want for you to hemorrhage to get my attention. I don't need an emergency to take place for me to engage with what is important in my life. Next week, we're going to look at the life of Jesus, and we're going to look at some of the patterns of his life that I think that we can learn much from when it comes to rest for our soul. But today, I wanted you to see the cadence of creation. I wanted you to see that the Sabbath, it matters. And I just want to give you 2 truths today. I'm going to write these down quick, and we're going to get you out of here to get to what you're going to. But I want you to write these 2 things down. Number 1, this is it. Rest without work is lazy. Rest without work is lazy. Sabbath rest assumes work, okay? If you don't work, then you don't need a rest. There's a pattern. It's 6 days of work, and then it's a 7th day that you stop, pause, and you rest. If you are resting without working, the Bible calls that lazy. Yo, bro, I'm playing Call of Duty, man. I'm really good. How good? I'm good. Do they pay you? No, not good enough. You need to get a job. You need to apply yourself. You need to work. Why? Because if you live a lazy life, the result will be restlessness. If you live a lazy life, anxiety and depression will be your friends. You will miss out on purpose. You were created to work. What happens is that we buy into the American dream, forsaking the kingdom dream. And the American dream says, let me work really hard. Let me tend to everything that's urgent. Let me be overworked. Let me be tired. Let me push myself. Let me be distracted. But I'm looking forward to that day when I become 65. And at 65, I will retire. And once I retire, life will be happy because I will live every day on a beach drinking margaritas and I'll finally be at peace. Do some research on that. Do you know that literally the death toll rises after people retire? Anxiety and depression, suicide goes up after people retire. Why? Because what if the thing you despise is actually keeping you alive? See, without work, without a job, without this moment in life that you're applying and putting your hands to work, putting your mind to work, people lose their sense of purpose. Some of us in this room, we have this contaminated vision that's not from God, and that is I'm gonna work really hard so one day I can sit around and do nothing. Listen to me, you don't have to work that job for the rest of your life. I'm just telling you, once you retire, there's still work to do. Let me just show you, Genesis chapter 2, verse 15, because this is not like Rich giving you a lecture. Genesis chapter 2, verse 15, this is before the fall of man. So if you're familiar with God's word, if you're familiar with the story of God, God creates man, creates a utopia, a paradise called Eden. Man disobeys God, and because they disobey God, God has to send his son Jesus on a rescue mission. But before man had sinned, look at this, Genesis chapter 2, verse 15. The Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden. So just think, this is the closest thing to heaven on earth, paradise, utopia. Put him in the Garden of Eden to, what's the word? Oh, come on, what's the word? To work it. And take care of it. Wait a minute. Why is there work in paradise? Because there's something to it. You were created to work. Some of you are gonna be really disappointed when you get to heaven. Spoiler alert, there's work in heaven. Read Revelation, there's jobs for us to do. Because there's something about us when we work that we're actually living out what we were designed and made to do. I was designed to work. Christians should be the best workers on the planet. You need more Bible for that? Whatever your hand finds to do it, do it with all your heart. Whatever you do it unto the Lord. Listen to me, your failure to get a promotion at work should not be due to your work ethic. It should be some other variable. It should be some other factor. Because you, as a follower of Jesus, you ought to remind everybody around you, greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I got an unfair advantage. Heaven's got my back. I was made to work. I got a purpose in it. I was created to do it. So listen to me. Rest without work, it's lazy. So Sabbath talk begins with work. I do not want us to raise up a church that we've got $1 million dreams with $100 work ethic. That's not who we are. But work without rest is slavery. There is a balance. There is a pattern. There's a cadence. There's a rhythm. 6 days on, 1 day off. 6 days on, 1 day off. Remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. Can I pastor our church for 1 minute? Some of us in this room, we're enslaved to our dream. Some of us in this room, we're enslaved to our vision. We're enslaved to our future. Enslaved to our bank account. No, whom the Son sets free is free indeed. You have to balance all of that work with rest. And I have a sense in my spirit that I know our church. And this is a type A church. We put everyone on the Enneagram. We got a lot of 8s in here. There's some can-do, ambitious-driven people. And I'm telling you, you can work as hard as you think and you can go, I'm nonstop and I can handle it, but it will catch up with you because Sabbath is coming for us. And if we go against the grain of the universe, don't be surprised when you get a splinter. We're called to rest. But Sabbath, it won't just happen by default. It will only happen by design. Have you ever not charged your iPhone the night you went to bed? Does this ever happen to you? Or maybe it's just me, you forgot, and you woke up and your phone's on the red bars, and now you're leaving the house and your phone's on red bars. Does it mess up your day like it messes up mine? For the rest of the day now, I'm trying to catch up. I'm looking for a charge. Hey, do you got a charger? And I'm getting a percentage. I'm looking for, can I get charged? Okay, hey, can I borrow your charger? And all day long, I'm living on red. Some of us in this room, that's where we're living. Your whole life, you're looking for a charge. You're coming here today, I need a charge. You're living on red. You're boiling over. You're flipping out. You're angry. You're disconnected. The way you're behaving towards your kids, they're not that bad. You're just that impatient. It's because you're living on red. It's because you're drained, and it's because you're looking for everything around you to give you a charge. But it's a scramble, and it leads to a life not of importance, but a life of urgency. We need a systematical plan of how we will rest and recharge. Otherwise, we are slaves to our work. So the pattern was 6 days I work and 1 day I stop. Maybe you're hearing, okay, I'm gonna buy into this whole Sabbath thing, but what do I do on the Sabbath, man? What do I do? There's a lot we could talk about that. And I actually think that you should sit down and start to define what you can and can't do. Not out of legalism, out of love and out of revelation. I'm gonna show you next week that Jesus, he adhered to the Sabbath. I love it because a lot of us are like, oh man, the Sabbath is part of the law. And so with this attempt to not be under the law, it's like we threw the baby out with the bathwater. Now there's nobody who even takes a moment of Sabbath. Your Sabbath is a day that you connect with your Creator. You stop working and you connect with your Creator. In fact, there's theologians that make this beautiful case that on the seventh day when God rested, once again, he wasn't tired, but rather God, who's always creating, what he was doing on that day is he was creating rest. I just think that's cool. He created rest. And part of it was for us to stop and connect with our Maker. But not just connect with our Creator, to connect with creation. Some of you parents, you work so hard to feed your kids. There ought to be 1 day a week that you stop and go, wow, it's working. There should be a day that you are being refreshed. What refreshes your soul? This is important that you define this. Some of you, you work all week with your hands. I got a feeling that on your Sabbath, you should do something with your mind, read a book. There's others of you that you work all week with your brain. Your brain is at work. You're doing numbers, you're in finance, you're dealing with spreadsheets. Maybe on your Sabbath, you should do something with your hands. What refreshes your soul? What makes you come alive? Remember last week that verse? It says, I want to show you the light and easy way. What makes you feel light? What makes you feel easy? I think a lot of us are like, oh, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna lay around and just watch Netflix all day. Does that really make your soul feel refreshed? Probably not. For my wife and I, it's us trying to put the phone away, disconnect, turn it off. It's a day for my wife and I. For Jews, there's all these rules for the Sabbath. One of the rules is that you're supposed to have sex on the Sabbath with your spouse, of course. Let me clarify for our progressive church here, with your husband or wife. But I think that's beautiful. With our urgent schedules, sometimes the intimacy of our marriage can be forsaken. But some of us, we need to reprogram. I'm bringing Sabbath back. Oh, I'm looking forward to Sabbath this week. It becomes the day that I look forward to. It becomes the day that I can continue in my week because I had it. It's set apart. It brings purpose to every other day. You need to be closed one day of the week. Okay, so I need to literally be closed on Sunday. Doesn't have to be Sunday. Please let us not be a church that gets caught up in petty arguments. But what day is the real Sabbath? Begins at sunset on Friday night and goes to sunset on Saturday. That's the Sabbath. Sunday, we gather and we worship. And the reason why we gather and worship, it's known as the Lord's Day. In Acts, what happened was that New Testament Christians, they started obeying the Sabbath, but then they would rise on Sunday, they would go on Sunday, and they would worship together. Then Constantine rechanged the days. Now there's denominations, and there's Christians that are mad at each other because you don't honor the Sabbath right, and you don't know which day it is, and this church doesn't get it right. You're missing the point. You've completely disregarded what Jesus has said. Mark chapter 2, verse 27. Then he said to them, this is Jesus, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath. Did you see that? The Sabbath was made for man. Meaning God said, I designed this day as a gift for you. So if you can't be closed on Sunday, by the way, I'm not closed on Sunday. I'm open on Sunday. So my wife and I, we're choosing to be closed on Saturday. Let's put the phone away. Let's sleep in. Let's break bread together. It should be like a one-day vacation. It should be like Christmas without that weird uncle. It should be, I'm connecting with God's creation. I'm reflecting. It is good. It is good. I know there's things tomorrow that could, but man, I'm recentering my soul upon his word. I'm focusing on the important. Maybe you're not gonna be closed on Sunday, but you should be closed on Monday or closed on Tuesday or closed on Wednesday or closed on Thursday, closed on Friday, closed on Saturday. This message that I'm giving today, it's not just something that I'm preaching at you. It's something that we as a team and as a church that we are really reflecting upon. And we've already started to make some decisions. In fact, the last Sunday of this year in 2019, for the first time ever, December 28th, we're not gonna gather as a church. We're gonna actually be closed on Sunday. What do you mean? We're not gonna gather? No, gather with your family. Gather with your friends. If you have to be in a church service, lots of great churches here in Miami that we love, that we support. Go, gather, support them, love them. But why are we doing it? We're doing it because this church is not made up of some staff that gets paid. It's made up of servant leaders. And I love the work that they do. It's worthy work. We should apply ourselves. We should be excellent. We should be here at 5:45 to 11 p.m. at night with a smile on our face. But we want to actually adhere and say, God, we trust you. We're trusting you, God. I don't know if the offering will come in. We trust you. I don't know if everyone will show up the next week. We trust you. We're gonna stop. We're gonna give our team, we're gonna give our servant leaders rest. This week, we are challenging our church. I'm gonna adhere to it. Starting tonight, we're gonna go on a social media fast. Our church is not gonna put up anything on social media, nothing on Instagram. Our church is really, it runs operationally through Instagram. That's where we talk the most. That's where we communicate with our community. But we're gonna stop this week. We're gonna invite you to stop with us. We're gonna Sabbath. We're gonna give it to God. Maybe you're here today and you're like, man, this is radical. I know it is radical. I was tempted to almost call it holy rebellion. because that's what it is. It's a resistance to this world, that I will not conform to the pattern of this world. This is a trust issue for me, that God, I'm gonna trust you with 6 days rather than trust myself with 7 days. I'm gonna show you next week that God, he'll make up the time. Maybe you're not ready to give him 24 hours. Okay, I hear you. Can you give him 3? Can you give him 4? Can you take a step to say, for this 8-hour window, we're disconnecting. We're gonna connect with God. We're gonna connect with his creation. We're gonna pause. We're gonna refrain from work. We're gonna refrain from the distraction. We're gonna refrain from overworking. We're gonna refrain from being overly tired. We're gonna sleep. We're gonna rest. We're gonna pause. Because friend, the cadence is true. Being closed on Sunday is a basic equation. It means this. It means that I'm gonna work 6 days like it depends on me, but I'm gonna add rest like it depends on God, and I believe it's gonna equal my soul's success. Do you believe that today? Come on, can we give God some praise in this room? Come on, if you believe that, why don't you stand to your feet all over this room? We're gonna take a moment. Let's just get in God's presence for a moment. I ask that you wouldn't leave, but can you stop? Can you pause? Can you lift your hands towards heaven? And today, can we lift our voice all over this room, and can we give our God the praise, the worship, the glory, the adoration that he deserves? Come on, all over this room. Come on, 1215. Let's lift it up. Let's sing it out. Come on, hear the ocean.